My brother was the perfect favorite for 21 years, but a DNA test revealed he's the bastard. Now I inherited the entire family business and he's crying, begging me to forgive him. I'm 21 years old. I work in the HVAC business that my grandpa started decades ago. And I need to tell this story because what happened in the last few months basically destroyed my family in a way I never imagined possible. And the thing is, my whole life, I was the son nobody wanted, the one who always did everything wrong, the one who was never enough, while my brother Austin, 2 years older than me, was basically perfect in my parents' eyes, especially my father Richard's. But turns out the universe has a pretty twisted sense of humor, because now all of that flipped in a way I'm still struggling to process. I guess I should start at the beginning, or at least where I remember things being somewhat normal. I grew up in a house where I always felt like I was extra, you know, like my parents had planned to have one perfect son, and I just showed up 2 years later by accident to ruin the family photo. My dad, Richard, was always closer to Austin. Always. For as long as I can. Remember, Austin was the one who went with Dad to work on weekends, the one who learned the business, the one who got pats on the back and comments like, "Oh, son, I'm so proud of you." Me, on the other hand, if I got good grades, it was because the test had been easy. If I did something right, it was because I'd gotten lucky. And if I screwed up even a little bit, that's when I'd get hour-long lectures about responsibility and commitment and blah, blah, blah. My mom, Catherine, wasn't much help either. Honestly, she kind of just went along with whatever my dad thought. So if he thought Austin was wonderful, she did too. And if he thought I was a problem, well, you can imagine. I lived like that my whole childhood and adolescence. Literally my entire life feeling like the B-son, like the spare, like the one who was just there, because what are you gonna do? Austin studied business administration because he was going to inherit the family business someday. That was crystal clear. I know what I wanted to study because nobody ever asked me. Nobody ever showed interest in my plans or what I liked. So I ended up working in the business too. But obviously doing the parts nobody wanted to do, loading equipment, doing inventory, the heavy jobs, while Austin learned how to handle clients and make estimates and all those important things. Grandpa died when I was like 15, I think, or almost 16, I don't remember exactly. He was my dad's father, the one who had started the whole business from scratch. And he was always kind of weird with me and Austin. Like he treated us both okay, but there was something in his look when he saw Austin. I don't know, like distrust or something. I never gave it much importance at the time, because I was more worried about surviving high school and feeling miserable in my own house. What I didn't know then, and what would become super relevant later, is that Grandpa had left everything very well tied up in his will regarding the business and the inheritance. But we discovered that much later. Fast forward to like 6 months ago. More or less. I was 21 already. Austin, 23. And we were still living in the family house because, well, in this economy, who can move out? And besides, my dad always said, why waste money on rent if there was space in the house? The thing is, my mom and dad had been weird lately, more distant, and I honestly thought it was just old marriage stuff or something. They'd been married like 25 years, so I guess it's normal for things to cool off sometimes. What I didn't know, what nobody knew except my mom, is that she had been keeping a gigantic secret during all those years. One day I got home from work, and the house was in a really uncomfortable silence. One of those heavy silences you can feel. My dad was in his study with the door closed, which was weird because he almost never closed that door. I went up to my room thinking maybe they'd had a fight or something, I don't know, when I heard yelling coming from downstairs. Not normal fight yelling, but my dad yelling things like, "How could you, and all these years, and I can't believe you did this to me." My mom was crying. I could hear her from upstairs, and Austin had gone out, so he wasn't there to witness all the drama that was about to unfold. Turns out my dad had found some old diaries of my mom's, like from years ago, stored in a box in the attic when he was looking for I don't know what thing. And in those diaries, my mom had written about an affair she'd had, an affair that lasted several years with a guy who had died like 12 years ago in a car accident. When I say affair, I don't mean a one-night thing. I mean a complete parallel relationship with regular meetings, feelings, the whole package. And the worst part, or the most relevant for what would come later, is that the dates of that relationship coincided perfectly with the period when Austin was conceived. My dad was devastated, absolutely devastated. I had never seen him like that, not even when Grandpa died. That night was total chaos, with my mom trying to explain and my dad not wanting to hear anything, and me basically hiding in my room not knowing what to do or think. Austin got home late and found the disaster. And when he found out what was happening, he didn't know how to react either because, of course, nobody expects to discover your mom had an affair that lasted years and that also coincides with when you were born. What happened next is something I didn't know at the time, but my dad told me later. Apparently, my grandpa, the one who had started the business, had always suspected my mom was unfaithful. I have no idea how or why, but he suspected it, and specifically thought that one of his grandchildren wasn't really his biological grandchild. That's why, when he made his will and established the trust for the business and all the properties, he put in a very specific clause that said the inheritance only went to provable biological grandchildren. At the time, we all thought it was a weird but irrelevant clause, because, well, we were his grandchildren, period. But Grandpa had been more astute than anyone thought. My dad, after reading those diaries and processing the nuclear bomb that had just fallen on his life, made a decision. He called his lawyer, explained the situation, and the lawyer told him that given the clause in Grandpa's will, the most sensible thing was to do DNA tests for Austin and for me. My dad told me one morning when I came down for breakfast. Just like that, no preamble. He said, "I need you and Austin to get DNA tests." I was like, "What? Why me too? If the dates of the affair line up with Austin, not me." But he insisted, said that since we were doing this, better to know everything, make sure of everything. The three of us went, my dad, Austin, and me, to a lab where they took blood or saliva samples, I don't remember well, and they told us the results would take like 2 weeks. Those 2 weeks were the most uncomfortable of my life, I swear. My mom had gone to stay with my aunt to give my dad space. Austin was in complete denial, saying this was stupid, and that obviously he was Dad's son, and I was in the middle of everything, not knowing what to think or feel. Part of me was angry at my mom for causing all this, but another part was like waiting, I don't know, waiting for something to change. Because deep down, I knew that if Austin turned out not to be my dad's biological son, that would change absolutely everything. The results came on a Tuesday. My dad opened the envelope in his study with both of us there, and when he read the papers, he turned pale. I am Richard's biological son. That was confirmed with 99.9% certainty. Austin is not. Austin is not my dad's biological son. The son from the affair, the son of that guy who died years ago, is Austin, not me. The real son, the blood son, the son who should have been the favorite all this time was me. I don't know how to explain what I felt in that moment. It was like a mixture of validation and rage and sadness, and even a bit of vengeful satisfaction, if I'm honest. My whole life I had been treated as less than Austin, as the problem child, the one who didn't matter as much, and turns out I was the only real son my dad had. Austin went into shock, literally didn't say anything for like 5 minutes, just kept staring at the papers like something would change if he looked at them long enough. My dad didn't know what to do or say either. He looked devastated, because despite everything, he had loved Austin. He had raised him thinking he was his son for 23 years. But me who had been ignored and belittled my whole life, felt something inside me that broke but at the same time was freed. And what I said next probably sounds pretty shitty, but I said it anyway because I felt I had the right after everything I'd lived through. I told my dad, if I had been the one who wasn't your biological son, you would have kicked me out of the house without thinking twice. 'Cause we know that's true. You always treated me like I was a nuisance, like I didn't matter. So now that you know Austin isn't your son, that he's the son of the guy Mom cheated on you with for years, I want you to do the same thing you would have done with me. I want you to kick him out of the house. My dad looked at me like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Austin started saying things like, "You can't be serious and this is crazy," but I was serious, very serious. I told my dad, "My whole life, you made me feel like I wasn't enough, that Austin was better than me at everything, that he was the son you wanted, and I was just the one you had to put up with. Now that we know the truth, Now that we know I'm your son and he's not, I want you to treat him like you would have treated me. It's only fair. You know what it feels like to have waited your whole life for someone to see you, for someone to value you, and it never happens, and then to discover you were right to feel bad, that it wasn't your fault, that there were concrete reasons why they treated you differently? I'm not saying I'm proud of having demanded they kick Austin out, but I also can't say I didn't feel like finally things were where they should be. My dad took like 3 days to make the decision, but in the end, he did it. He told Austin he had to leave the house. Austin cried, literally cried, begged my dad to reconsider, that he wasn't to blame for what Mom had done, that he'd raised him as his son all these years. And my dad told him, I know, and I'm sorry, but Ben is right. If the situation were reversed, I would have kicked Ben out without thinking, and it wouldn't be fair to treat you differently now. He gave him 2 weeks to find somewhere to stay and to get his things out. Those 2 weeks were horrible for everyone. Austin hated me, looked at me with a contempt I'd never seen before, and I felt weird because on one hand, I felt like I was finally getting what I deserved. But on the other hand, I saw my dad completely devastated, watching his family fall apart, and I couldn't help but feel some guilt. But then I'd remember all the times I'd felt invisible. All the times Austin had received praise for minimal things, while I made triple the effort and didn't even get a thanks. And the guilt would vanish. Austin finally moved in with some friends, taking his stuff in several boxes that I helped him load into the car, because, yeah, I helped. I'm not a complete monster. And the house felt weirdly empty without him. My dad was in a kind of autopilot. Went to work, came back, locked himself in his study. I tried to talk to him but didn't know what to say, how to console him when I was part of the reason he was like this. Like a week after Austin left, I got a call from him. I thought he was going to yell at me or insult me, but his voice sounded calm, almost too calm. He told me we needed to talk, that he had information I needed to. I know. I said, what information? And he dropped that Mom hadn't just had that affair, that she'd had several more throughout the years, that he knew, because he'd found other things when he searched through the boxes in the attic after Dad found the diaries. He told me that if I didn't convince Dad to let him come back to the house, he was going to tell Dad about Mom's other affairs, that he was basically going to destroy whatever image Dad still had of his marriage. It was basically an attempt at blackmail, and I got angry, really angry, because Austin was trying to use information about Mom to manipulate me, to return to a house where he no longer had the right to be. I told him to do whatever he wanted, that I didn't care, that Dad deserved to know the complete truth anyway. And I hung up. Austin followed through on his threat. He went to the house when I wasn't there, talked to Dad, and told him everything. He told him that Mom had had at least 2 other affairs throughout the years, with names and dates he'd found in letters and old emails that Mom had printed and saved for some reason. When I got there that night, my dad was in his study with a half-empty bottle of whiskey, crying. I had never seen my dad cry, ever. He told me what Austin had said, and I didn't know what to do except sit there with him in silence. What followed was my dad calling my mom and confronting her about everything, about the original affair, about the other affairs, about basically their entire married life being a lie. My mom admitted everything, said she was sorry but that it had happened, that she couldn't change the past. My dad told her he wanted a divorce, that he'd already contacted a lawyer, and that he didn't want to see her again. She didn't even fight it, just said okay and hung up. My mom came to the house like 3 days later with my aunt, packed all her stuff in boxes and suitcases, and left. She didn't even look at me when she passed through the living room where I was. She just took her things and left, and that was it. My dad kept the house, the business, everything, because the lawyer told him that with the evidence of multiple infidelities, the divorce was going to be pretty straightforward and favorable for him. At some point during all this mess, Austin called me again, but this time he sounded different, like desperate. He told me he had a plan, that if we worked together, we could get Mom and Dad back together, that we could fix everything. I honestly thought he'd gone crazy. I told him like, bro, Dad is filing for divorce. Mom admitted everything. There's no going back. What plan could exist here? And he insisted that if the two of us united, if we showed a united front, our parents would see that family was more important and would get back together. It was completely delusional, like he hadn't processed any of what had happened, like he was still living in some fantasy where things could go back to how they were before. I told him no, that wasn't going to happen, that he needed to accept reality. He got angry, told me I had destroyed everything, that if I hadn't demanded they kick him out, none of this would have happened. I responded that no, what had destroyed everything was Mom with her lies and cheating for decades, and that he and I were just victims of her decisions. He hung up and I haven't heard from him since. That was like 2 months ago. The weirdest thing about all this is what happened with my dad and me. One night, like a month after everything exploded, he knocked on my bedroom door and asked if we could talk. I sat on my bed and he sat at my desk, and he started apologizing. He told me he'd been a bad father, that he'd realized that my whole life he'd treated me as less important than Austin, that he'd never given me the credit or love I deserved. He told me he didn't know why he'd done it, that maybe subconsciously, he'd perceived something that made him favor Austin more, or maybe he'd just been a bad father for no reason, but that he was sorry. He told me he wanted to try to fix things with me, get to know me for real, be the father he should have been from the beginning. I'm not gonna lie, I cried. I cried because it was what I'd wanted to hear my whole life, and I was finally hearing it. But I also cried because it made me angry that all this had to happen, that my family had to be destroyed for my dad to finally see me. I told him I didn't know if I could forgive him, that I didn't know if we could fix 21 years of feeling ignored and less than my brother, but that I was willing to try if he was too. And he told me yes, that he was going to try. Now the two of us live alone in the house. We work together in the business. He actually teaches me the important things now, includes me in decisions. And we're like trying to build a relationship we never had. It's weird, it's uncomfortable sometimes, but it's something. My mom lives with my aunt in another state. I talk to her like once a month on the phone and the conversations are super superficial, like, how are you, fine, what's new, nothing, okay, bye. Austin hasn't tried to contact me again. I don't know where he is or what he's doing, and honestly, I'm not sure if I want to know. The divorce was finalized like 3 weeks ago. The business and Grandpa's inheritance officially remain for me because I'm the only biological grandchild, which is ironic because I was the one who was never going to inherit anything. The one who was destined to be just another employee, while Austin became the boss. My dad told me that when he retires, which will probably be in a few years, everything will be mine, and that he's going to start teaching me everything I need to know to run the business alone. I don't know how to feel about all this, honestly. Part of me feels like I finally got justice, that things are where they should be. But another part of me sees the pieces of my family scattered everywhere and wonders if it was worth it, if I should have demanded they kick Austin out, if I should have been more compassionate. My dad says it's not my fault, that all this was caused by my mom's decisions decades ago, and that I just reacted to a horrible situation the only way I knew how. I guess he's right, but it's still hard not to wonder what would have happened if I'd taken a different path. The only thing I know for certain is that my family as I knew it no longer exists. My mom is basically out of the picture. Austin is who knows where doing who knows what, and I'm here with my dad trying to build something new from the ruins of what we had before. I don't know if things will ever be fixed with Austin, if he and I will be able to talk without all this resentment and pain between us. I don't know if I'll ever be able to fully forgive my mom for lying for so many years and causing all this mess. And I don't know if my dad and I can really have the father-son relationship we never had, or if there will always be this shadow of the lost years between us. But I'm here. I'm trying. And that's the only thing I can do for now.